Donald Trump is facing a third indictment. And to quickly refresh you on the state of things, the current GOP frontrunner is accused of trying to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Tuesday's indictment charges him with 4 counts, including conspiracy and obstruction. Special prosecutor Jack Smith was blunt after the indictment was unsealed.
Since the attack on our Capitol, the Department of Justice has remained committed to ensuring accountability for those criminally responsible for what happened that day.
Trump is also facing criminal charges in Manhattan connected to hush money payments made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. He was also indicted on charges related to his handling of classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago. Trump could soon be indicted in Georgia over efforts to overturn the 2020 election as well. Here to talk about the panoply of other cases are CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion, investigative reporter Graham Kates, and our chief national affairs and justice correspondent Jeff Pegues. Nikole, we're going to start with you. What's the latest out of the Georgia investigation?
Well, relative to what we saw happen earlier today in Washington, D.C., things have been relatively quiet here in Fulton County. But make no mistakes, the process is very much underway here as District Attorney Fani Willis moves closer to a potential charging decision. Two grand juries were seated last month. We do know that one of those grand juries did meet here at the courthouse today and also met yesterday. And really, we are bracing for the possibility of some type of decision to be issued within either a matter of days or a matter of weeks, certainly sometime before the end of the month. In fact, the district attorney has made clear that she is ready to go with respect to this 2.5-year investigation that she and her office have been conducting. We did hear from the Fulton County Sheriff a bit earlier today because there are a lot of security measures that have been stepped up in preparation for a potential decision, including barricades that have been set up outside of the courthouse. But the sheriff, too, reiterated that his department is ready and that if an indictment were to come down today, they, too, are in a position where they're ready to go.
Nikole, might Tuesday's indictment affect the Georgia case?
You know, it's unlikely that it would have any direct impact other than timing if there is an indictment here and it impacts the scheduling of future trials. But what I will say, and what you very well know, is there is quite a lot of overlap between these two cases. You know, reading through Tuesday's indictment, there are several pages about what happened here in Georgia, including some of the calls that were made to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. And reading directly from that indictment, it says the defendant lied to the Georgia Secretary of State to induce him to alter Georgia's popular vote count and call into question the validity of the Biden electors' vote. And it goes on to cite, and of course, the defendant being the former president, these allegations that he raised about potential dead people voting, which the Secretary of State disputed. And also that infamous call where the former president pressed the Secretary of State to find him the 11,760 votes. So we do know that, of course, Brad Raffensperger spoke with federal prosecutors. He also appeared before a special grand purpose jury here in Fulton County some time ago. And so it is likely that from that standpoint, you know, we will see similar readouts with respect to a prospective indictment here, simply because the district attorney is looking into similar facts, including that call that the Secretary of State made. I would also very briefly note that in listening to the Fulton County Sheriff earlier today, he did talk about, in terms of preparations that they are making, that it's possible he could send a team to Washington when the former president makes his court appearance. That is something that the Fulton County Sheriff's Office did in the case of the indictment where we saw the former president appear in Miami. In the classified documents case, also in New York, he sent a team, and he said that his department has learned lessons about the importance of setting up a security perimeter. So it's very possible from a security preparation standpoint that this indictment today could impact how the Fulton County Sheriff's Office and potentially the district attorney moves forward.
Nikole Killion, thank you so much from down there in Atlanta. Graham, let's go to you next. We're talking now about the Manhattan District Attorney's investigation of the former President Trump. Give us an update on where that stands right now.
Sure. The trial of that case is scheduled for March 2024. That's in the heat of the primary season, and it's expected to last a couple of weeks. But these early months of the pretrial process have largely been marked by Trump's attempts to get the current judge off of the case. He asked that judge, New York Judge Juan Merchan, to recuse himself, and separately asked a federal judge to move the case from state court to federal court. Last month, that effort was rejected. The federal judge said, no, this case belongs in New York court. And he said that a lot of the arguments that Trump had put forward weren't with merit. And an interesting thing that happened around that same time in July was that New York judge actually ruled in Trump's favor in a couple of matters. He quashed subpoenas related to emails between Melania Trump and a couple of Trump Organization staffers, and also subpoenas seeking a wide range of emails from the Trump Organization to White House personnel.
Graham, the case in Manhattan is, of the three cases, criminal cases in which the president has been indicted, it is widely viewed by analysts and lawyers to be the weakest of the three. Is that, or it was, originally when it was brought, does that still hold? Is there an emerging view that's different from that in terms of those who watch this case as it goes forward and as it heads to trial?
I can't speak to what case is weaker or stronger than any other one, but an interesting thing from the federal judge's ruling was that he actually kind of point by point knocked back against a lot of the arguments that Trump and his team have been making, both in court and in public, against that case. One of the things is about whether these can be charged as felonies at all. This is 34 state felony charges of falsification of business records. And there have been some questions about whether that's an appropriate charge. And the federal judge said essentially that there wasn't a good argument against that, at least that he heard during the one hearing that he oversaw and the filings that he reviewed. And, I know from sources at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office that they were really surprised by the length that federal judge went in kind of defending them, and they saw that as a major victory that they could potentially carry forward into the trial.
Jeff Pegues, I now want to switch to you. What's the latest on the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case?
There is a new defendant in that case. He appeared in court earlier this week on Monday. He didn't enter a plea. His name is Carlos de Oliveira. He is the property manager, or has been there for about 20 years, and now prosecutors have accused him, along with Walt Nauta and Mr. Trump, of trying to move and obstruct and delete some of the evidence in this case. So this case also has many serious charges already, on top of the fact that the former president had these classified documents in his possession that he should not have had at that time. And John, we're actually coming up on the anniversary of this Mar-a-Lago search. It's how time flies and how the world has changed in all of these cases. But this is another complicated case. A lot of people think that perhaps of all the cases the former president is facing, this may be the most cut and dry. But there are so many issues in this case about classification and who has the clearances to see these documents. It makes it a little bit more complicated in terms of a timeline for how this case progresses.
Jeff Pegues, thank you, along with Graham Kates and Nikole Killion.